Alturas, Florida, is a small, unincorporated community nestled in Polk County in the heart of the state. This rural area is deeply rooted in agriculture, particularly citrus farming, which has long been a cornerstone of the local economy. While Alturas is geographically close to larger cities like Bartow and Lake Wales, it retains a quiet, small-town charm that sets it apart. Situated within Florida's citrus belt, Alturas is characterized by flat landscapes, sandy soils, and a subtropical climate. The community experiences hot, humid summers and mild winters, typical of Central Florida. Vast groves of orange trees, expansive fields, and patches of natural scrubland surround the area, lending Alturas a distinctly rural and somewhat secluded atmosphere. Life in Alturas moves at a leisurely pace, deeply tied to tradition in the land. The community's agricultural nature means that many residents are engaged in farming, ranching, or related activities. It's a place where neighbors are familiar faces, and the community spirit runs deep. Commercial establishments are few, so residents often travel to nearby towns for shopping, dining, and entertainment. The community is supported by a handful of schools, churches, and small businesses, with much of life centered around family and local gatherings. Alturas embodies the culture of rural Central Florida, blending Southern hospitality with a strong work ethic. The community is proud of its agricultural heritage and the simple, honest lifestyle that defines the area. For those who live in Alturas, it represents a haven from the rapid development seen elsewhere in Florida. It offers a glimpse into a slower-paced agrarian lifestyle that has been integral to the state's history. The natural beauty of Florida's interior is on full display here, without the distractions of urban life, making Alturas a unique and enduring place in a rapidly changing world. And this is where our story takes place. In the late 1980s, the small town of Alturas, Florida, was a quiet, rural community where neighbors knew each other and life moved at a slower pace. It was the kind of place where families felt safe, far removed from the chaos of urban life. Peggy Carr and her family were part of this close-knit community. Peggy, a mother of three, lived with her second husband, Pye Carr, and their blended family in a modest home surrounded by the natural beauty of Florida's countryside. Peggy was known as a loving mother who worked hard to provide for her children. She had endured a difficult first marriage, but with Pye, she found stability and a sense of peace. Her children from her first marriage, including her son Duane, had integrated well into their new family unit. Life for the Carr family was ordinary, marked by the usual ups and downs, but nothing could have prepared them for the tragedy that would unfold in the fall of 1988. It all began innocently enough. In October 1988, Peggy started to feel ill. At first, she thought it was just the flu, a common ailment that would pass with time. But as the days went by, her symptoms worsened. She complained of severe chest pains, difficulty breathing, and a general sense of malaise. Her family noticed that Peggy, usually vibrant and full of life, was deteriorating rapidly. Alarmed, Pye took her to the hospital, where doctors struggled to diagnose her condition. Initially, the doctors believed Peggy was suffering from stress or anxiety, as her symptoms were nonspecific and could have been attributed to various conditions. However, as her condition worsened, it became clear that something far more sinister was at play. Within days of her hospitalization, Peggy slipped into a coma. Her family was devastated, and the doctors were baffled. They had no idea what was causing her sudden and severe illness. As Peggy lay in the hospital, her family remained at home, unaware that they too were in danger. Not long after Peggy fell ill, her son Duane and her stepson Travis began to experience similar symptoms. Both boys complained of numbness in their hands and feet, excruciating pain, and an overwhelming sense of fatigue. They were quickly hospitalized, and their conditions, like Peggy's, rapidly deteriorated. The Carr family was in a state of panic, with multiple members of the household suddenly and inexplicably falling gravely ill. The situation took a terrifying turn when doctors began to suspect that the family had been poisoned. After conducting a series of tests, they discovered that Peggy, Duane, and Travis had elevated levels of thallium in their systems. Thallium is an extremely toxic metal once commonly used in rat poison, but banned in many countries due to its lethal nature. The doctor's suspicions were confirmed. The Carr family had deliberately poisoned. The revelation that the Carr family had been poisoned with thallium sent shockwaves through the Alturas community. Who could commit such a heinous act? And why target the Carr family? These questions haunted both the community and the authorities as they launched a full-scale investigation into the attempted murders. Detectives from the Polk County Sheriff's Office were assigned to the case, quickly focusing on the family's home, suspecting that the poison had been introduced into their food or drink. Investigators meticulously combed through the house, testing various items for traces of thallium. They also conducted interviews with family members, neighbors, and anyone who had come into contact with the Carr family in the weeks leading up to the poisoning. Despite their extensive efforts, the investigation initially yielded few clues. The detectives couldn't identify any obvious source of the thallium, and there were no clear suspects. The Carr family had no known enemies, and there was no apparent motive for the crime. As the investigation dragged on, Peggy's condition worsened. After months in a coma, she passed away in March 1989, leaving her family devastated and the investigators more determined than ever to find the person responsible. The case took a critical turn when detectives began to focus on a particularly unusual lead. During their interviews with neighbors, several people mentioned George Trepple, a man who lived just down the street from the Carr family. Trepple was an eccentric figure, known for his intelligence and unusual hobbies. He was a member of Mensa, the high IQ society, and had a deep interest in chemistry and puzzles. He also had a somewhat strained relationship with his neighbors, including the Carrs. As investigators delved deeper into Trepple's background, they uncovered some disturbing details. Trepple had a criminal record, having previously been convicted of manufacturing methamphetamine. During a search of his home, detectives found books and materials related to poisons, including information on thallium. This discovery, coupled with his unusual behavior and proximity to the Carr family, made Trepple a prime suspect. The detectives also uncovered a key piece of evidence: a series of anonymous notes that had been sent to the Carr family in the weeks leading up to the poisoning. The notes were cryptic and threatening, warning the family that something bad was going to happen to them. Handwriting analysis compared the notes to samples taken from Trepple, and the results indicated a match. According to detectives, George Trepple poisoned the Carr family by lacing Coca-Cola bottles with thallium, a highly toxic metal. Trepple, who lived just down the street from the Carr family, reportedly used his knowledge of chemistry to carry out this crime. Investigators discovered that the thallium had been introduced into the family's home through these poisoned soft drinks. The bottles were likely tampered with before being placed back where the family would unknowingly consume them. This method of poisoning was particularly insidious because thallium is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, making it nearly impossible for the victims to detect. Armed with this evidence, authorities arrested George Trepple in 1990, charging him with the first-degree murder of Peggy Carr and the attempted murders of Duane and Travis Carr. The trial, held in 1991, became a media sensation, capturing the public's attention with its elements of a true crime thriller. A brilliant yet twisted mind, a rare and deadly poison, and a motive as chilling as it was mysterious. The prosecution's case against Trepple was compelling. They presented the evidence found in his home, the threatening notes, and highlighted Trepple's knowledge and means to carry out such a crime. They argued that Trepple's motive stemmed from his deep-seated dislike of the Carr family, particularly their noise and presence in the neighborhood, which he found intolerable. In his warped mind, Trepple had decided to eliminate them. Trepple's defense, however, contended that the evidence was circumstantial and that no direct proof linked him to the poisoning. They suggested that someone else could have been responsible and that Trepple was being unfairly targeted due to his eccentric personality and past criminal record. After a lengthy trial, the jury found George Trepple guilty of the murder of Peggy Carr and the attempted murders of her family members. He was sentenced to death and remains on death row to this day. The case stands as a landmark in criminal justice, not only for the meticulous investigation, but also for the chilling insights it provided into the mind of a man capable of such calculated and cold-blooded actions. The murder of Peggy Carr left an indelible mark on the Alturas community. The senseless nature of the crime, the suffering endured by the victims, and the prolonged investigation took a toll on everyone involved. For the Carr family, Peggy's loss was devastating, and the trauma of the poisoning lingered long after the trial concluded. The case also raised awareness about the dangers of thallium and underscored the need for vigilance in detecting rare and unusual methods of poisoning. It served as a grim reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, evil can manifest in the most unexpected forms. Today, the murder of Peggy Carr is remembered as one of Florida's most disturbing and complex cases. It remains a topic of interest for true crime enthusiasts and a cautionary tale about the potential for darkness within the human soul.